Week 8, it wasn't all roses for everybody. There are a lot of programs right now, Drew, that I think are a little bit shaken up, right, in terms of the blue bloods maybe heading in the opposite direction. You can go down the list: USC, Oklahoma, Michigan. We're going to talk about all these schools here, and let's start with the Trojans, Drew. 3-4, 1-4 in conference play in their first season in the Big Ten. Another very troubling loss on the road to Maryland. They lose this one by 1 point. Drew, Lincoln Riley now 22-12 in 3 seasons in LA, 4-9 in their last 13 games against Power 4 opponents. So, Drew, let's play the game. Panic or patience when it comes to Lincoln Riley and USC?
Coop, I am panicking if I'm a USC supporter, if I'm a Trojans fan, if I'm there in Los Angeles. Cooper, I think USC is dealing with a bit of a culture issue, right? And I've had a ton of exposure to the Trojans here the past few weeks. We saw them take on Michigan. We saw them rally against Wisconsin. And then on Saturday, all of a sudden, you find yourself going over to Fox Sports to watch this game against Maryland. And you're wondering, scratching your head, hey, what happened? Cooper, I just wonder what that locker room is like. If you look at the starters for USC on the road in College Park, 11 defensive starters, 8 of them are transfer prospects. I also don't think we're talking enough about adjusting to this new look Big Ten travel schedule. 3 of the losses at Michigan, at Minnesota, and at Maryland going across the country. To me, that starts with the head coach, getting those guys geared up and ready to go and playing in different time slots, traveling across the country. So I'm panicking right now when it comes to USC and Lincoln Riley. What about you, Cooper?
I'm going to panic too. And a lot of this has to do with the quarterback position. You look at Lincoln Riley dating back all the way to his time at Oklahoma. You go back and look at the players that he had. He had 3 years of Caleb Williams between Oklahoma, USC. Guy ends up winning the Heisman Trophy, the #1 pick in the draft. And then before that, Drew, you had guys like Spencer Rattler. He's going to start his 3rd game this upcoming week for the New Orleans Saints. Jalen Hurts, one of the highest paid players at his position in all of the NFL, not to mention guys like Murray and Mayfield that have come before him as well. So Oklahoma was one of those programs built to the quarterback position. He did an amazing job of stockpiling talent. He has yet to do that here at USC, outside of bringing Caleb Williams from Norman, Oklahoma, to when he left Oklahoma for the bright lights of LA. And Drew, now you have Miller Moss, who respectively I think has played well at times, but he is not those aforementioned names that we've talked about. Behind him, it's Jaden Maeva, the transfer from UNLV. Who is the guy? Malachi Nelson, 1 year and done, off to Boise State. He's not even starting there. You look at Julian Lewis, currently committed to USC, but there are a lot of rumors that he might end up somewhere else. So there's typically been a lot of pressure put on that quarterback position and the harmony between that quarterback position and Lincoln Riley, Drew. I just don't know if this is the right fit for Lincoln Riley in the Big Ten in LA. You got a new AD, Jen Cohen, coming over from Washington, Drew. I think there might be more pressure on him to win this year than people think. I wouldn't be surprised here if it doesn't go well down the stretch, if USC is kind of reevaluating and maybe says, hey, we want to go in a different direction.
Well, I think they look at Oregon also in the Big Ten, how they're recruiting on the defensive side of the ball. You address everything with the quarterbacks. To me, again, that defense, where is the homegrown talent? Where is the guys that they are pulling from their backyard, from Los Angeles, other parts of California, to spearhead that defensive unit? Yes, new defensive coordinator, new scheme, new system. But to me, still a lot of question marks, and they're relying on a lot of mercenaries there. I just worry about the overall roster construction. I got a lot of guys lured to LA because of the stars and all the lights. But these guys, when it's back against the wall late in the 4th quarter against Maryland, are they going to stand in there and get the stop? That's the big question mark I have with Lincoln Riley and USC.
It feels like they need a killer, and they don't have one. Dan Lanning, Oregon, you could say a tough matchup with Ohio State. They get it done at home. We'll see what the rest of the season looks like. They're just kind of missing that umph there at USC. Now let's talk about Lincoln Riley's ex at Oklahoma, Brent Venables. He's struggling too, Drew. You look at Oklahoma, 4-3, now 1-3 in conference play. A very tough and very hard game to watch against South Carolina, as South Carolina got the win 35-9 on the road in Norman, Drew. You look at Brent Venables, 20-13 now in 3 seasons at Oklahoma. Sooners now 5-6 in their last 11 Power 4 games as well. Here's a question, Drew. Panic or patience with Brent Venables in Oklahoma?
I'm panicking, Cooper, and I think this next offensive coordinator hire is going to divine Brent Venables' tenure there, right? If he doesn't get it right, then I think this thing is over there in Norman. We can talk about the quarterback situation. We can talk about the offensive line situation. To me, Cooper, the big question mark I have is where are the wide receivers for Oklahoma? I know a lot of these guys are dinged up, but I went back and I looked at the 2024 recruiting class. I looked at what they have committed here in 2025. I don't know if there is help on the way for Oklahoma at that wide receiver position. They rank 116th nationally right now in passing yards per game, 122nd in passing efficiency. They're 124th in yards per carry, 114th in rushing yards per game, 128th in third down efficiency. This offense is broken, right? And they keep pulling the strings on these different quarterbacks. I don't know what the answer is. You look at the defense, it has been good enough in certain spots for the Sooners, but they simply just can't score points. And for Brent Venables to turn things around, right, to show everyone there in Norman that he's the guy for this job, he has to get the offensive coordinator higher right. And to me, we haven't seen him do it yet, so it's hard to, not be panicking about the long-term outlook there for Oklahoma.
OC Seth Luttrell dismissed yesterday from Brent Venables in Oklahoma. Drew, you mentioned all those stats with Oklahoma's offense. What about their quarterback position as well, right? You look at Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins. What happens if both those guys leave? The way that they've handled this, you can't blame them. Oklahoma in a tough spot. Drew, I'm going to go panic as well. Oklahoma, they got to get it figured out. You looked at those next 5 games as well. At Kentucky, Vandy, ULM playing great ball under Brian Vincent right now. Texas A&M and Alabama. This is going to be tough to get to 6 wins and to be bowl eligible. And if that's the case, Brent Venables, similar to Lincoln Riley, it might be tough going into year 4. We'll see what happens there, Drew. Let's talk a little bit about Auburn staying in the SEC. 2-5, 0-4 this season in conference. They have not beat a Power 4 team. Their wins coming against New Mexico State and Alabama A&M. New Mexico and Alabama A&M. Drew, this one is tough, especially because you have parts of a team that look better than what they've actually showed. The results are not there. Panic or patience coming off a loss in Columbia against Mizzou for Auburn.
Oh, Coop, that's why I'm going with a patience here right now. I think the silver lining, if you are an Auburn supporter, you're an Auburn fan, is you can look at that roster and you can see the talent that has come through the high school ranks. And you look up right now, Auburn's recruiting class sitting in the top 5. And I think that's going to be the case as long as Hugh Freeze is there. But man, the on-field results just haven't come to fruition. I think Hugh Freeze has to get this quarterback situation right. And I think for a veteran signal caller that'll likely be available on the transfer portal market, it looks ready to play there on the Plains. I mean, you got a competent defense with a ton of difference makers. You got a potential wide receiver 1 in Cam Coleman. You got a starting center in Connor Liu. They're going to have to find some offensive tackles. So I'm in a wait and see mode because I think Auburn knows they have to go out and get a veteran quarterback to right the ship. And I think Auburn is going to be as active as anyone when it comes to trying to find the next Cam Ward, trying to find the next guy that can step in and turn things around for the school. So I'm patient right now just because I believe in what is already there on the roster, and I believe what's coming in through that high school class.
I'm patient as well for all the points you just made, but Hugh Freeze has made this extremely difficult on himself and his staff. This should be a year where you're building towards 8-9 wins. Now year 3 looks a little bit daunting, where you're going to have to win in year 3, or it's probably another regime change. It doesn't help that Brian Harsin had a very similar record through 2 seasons on the Plains. I'm hitting the patience button as well with Auburn. The last one here, Michigan, Drew, now 4-3, 2-2 in conference. They lose to Illinois on the road. You look at Jerome Moore. It's been quarterback musical chairs here. It was Davis Warren, then it was Alex Orji. Now it's Jack Tuttle. They don't have an answer there. They're one of the worst passing teams in the country. They only have 7 plays of over 10 yards or more in the passing game. You're looking at Michigan, the defending national champions, Drew. This one is tough. Then you have Michigan State coming to town. They're playing good ball. Ohio State a little bit later on the schedule. I don't know, Drew. Panic or patience here for Jerome Moore and company.
This is a red hot panic for me, Cooper. And you want to know why? Michigan, player development type of program. But this is a team that just won the college football playoff. I don't think they capitalized enough on the recruiting front. Go back to that 2024 recruiting class. 8 prospects inside the top 247 signed with the Wolverines. Cooper, none of those guys have played more than 5 offensive or defensive snaps this season. That includes quarterback Jaden Davis, who they beat out plenty around the country for. The fact that Jaden Davis hasn't hasn't been mentioned in this quarterback situation, hasn't at least been given a few drives to me is super concerning, especially when you look down the line what they have committed here in 2025. Carter Smith, a kid out of Florida, I really like him. Reminds me of Max Duggan, but he's a run-first quarterback. I just don't know where this vertical passing attack is going to come from the Wolverines. And again, I don't think they capitalize enough on what they did last season when it comes to high school recruiting.
Borderline incompetence, the way that they handled this quarterback situation going into the year. That says a lot about Jerome Moore. I don't know how you go into the season the way that they did. On top of it, Drew, you look at defensively, Mason Graham gone, Kenneth Grant gone, Will Johnson gone. Talking about 3 first-round draft picks, all gone out of there. Throwing Colson Loveland on offense, Khalil Mullings, Donovan Edwards, potentially a couple starters on the offensive line. That is a lot of guys that you have to replace from Michigan. I don't have a lot of confidence. I'm hitting the panic button as well if I'm a Michigan fan. They have not won less than 5 games. You have to go all the way back to 2014, Brady Hoke's last season. If that's the guy you're being compared to, if you're Jerome Moore, that's not very good.